Hi guys, and welcome to Piano and Keyboard Artist, where we discuss the artists related to pianos, keyboards, and synthesizers. And continuing with my Depeche Mode album review series, this is Violator, Part 4. Hello to you, my friend, and welcome to the most in-depth Depeche Mode album review series ever conducted by an independent YouTuber. This is part 4. If you've not seen parts 1, 2, or 3 yet, get out of here, go watch those first, and then come back to this part. Before we get started, I want to introduce you to the Vaughn George Patreon community. If you join the Vaughn George Patreon channel, you can watch videos like this with a little bit more detail. Also, the videos that I release on my Patreon channel feature the original music in the background. So if I'm talking about a song, the song that I'm talking about will be playing in the background for reference. That is something that I cannot do here on YouTube because of copyright reasons. But if you join the Vaughn George Patreon community for as little as $2 a month, you can help sustain this channel, but you can also be a part of secret live streams, Zoom chats, and other fun stuff. Right, let's jump into part 4, which is today's episode. And in this episode, we're going to focus on the singles and the B-sides. I think a lot of you will agree with me when I say that Depeche Mode were one of the bands that kind of defined the idea, of a B-side and a maxi and an extended version of something. Now, that's just my opinion. I might be wrong in saying that, but I do remember all the bands of that time, and I really give Daniel Miller the credit for this for some reason. I just think he was very good at managing them and marketing them. And Depeche Mode in the earlier years would always release outstanding, remixes, B-sides. I'm a little less enthusiastic about the remixes and stuff that are released these days. They're a little bit too... well, let's not go there for this video. But let's focus on this golden period. One thing that a lot of Depeche Mode fans will agree with me is that Violator, the Violator period, produced some of the best B-sides in the whole catalogue. I mean, if we go back to the B-sides, there are often a lot of great B-sides that you would think, why did this B-side not make it onto the album? But definitely in the case of Violator, the B-sides from the Violator singles were, in my opinion, some of the strongest in the Depeche Mode catalogue. In fact, the B-sides released in this period are so strong that a lot of people, a lot of fans would argue that songs like Sea of Sin, Happiest, and Dangerous are so strong they could have made it onto the actual Violator album. And I'm going to give you my opinion on that in just a moment. But before I do that, a brief history lesson. Okay, so let's look at the singles that were released from the Violator album. So before the release of the album, Depeche Mode, on the 28th of August 1989, they released Personal Jesus. Now, if you remember on one of the documentaries, Fletch said that, as a band, we're very cynical. We never think the band's going to do well. We never think it's going to chart. Fletch did go on to say how cynical they are as a band, quite pessimistic. They don't expect much. They don't expect their music to get into the charts. They don't have high expectations when they release something. But of course, Personal Jesus broke new ground. It won a whole new fan base. And I believe that this particular single, Personal Jesus, was the biggest selling single. Was it the 7-inch in Warner Brothers history? Correct me if I'm wrong. And indeed, when Personal Jesus came out, it was, here's Depeche Mode, but in a way you've never heard them before, complete with a stompy rhythm and guitars. Now remember, continuing in this Violator album review series, which is going to be very long, I will be tackling one song per episode. So every song will have its own episode. We're going to go into a lot of detail, and I do not want to leave any stone unturned. But now on the Personal Jesus single, the B-side to that was Dangerous. And I remember hearing this for the first time. Bang, boom, 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 bam, bam. Dangerous, in my opinion, is such a strong song that it may as well been released on the actual Violator album. You know, it could have been the 10th track. I'll get into that a little bit later, but I just want to focus on the singles at the moment. The next single which they released after that was Enjoy the Silence, and this was released on the 5th of February 1990. Now, Enjoy the Silence was absolutely groundbreaking as well. I think it's probably not as sonically radical as Personal Jesus, which was just like, you know, sort of, it really pushed the frontiers of synthesized sounds and different styles, you know, with like a blues guitar and all that. Enjoy the Silence had a more kind of conventional feel about it, not in a bad way. I mean, it's very Depeche Mode. There's nothing middle of the road about it. Of course, I have said often that it was the approach that Flood and Alan Wilder chose to take that made this song the monstrous hit it was. If you remember the demo that they did, if you heard Enjoy the Silence in its demo form, remember that the brief was in the beginning of making this record. Martin was told, look, Martin, don't come in with fully fleshed out demos. Bring in something very, very raw so that there's a lot to work from. As I've said, if you listen to demos like Shake the Disease, the demo, you can hear all the parts in the demo are present. Obviously, it doesn't sound as epic as what the finished product does, but all the little musical motifs are present in that demo. But if you listen to the demos from the Violator period, I haven't heard them all, but indeed Enjoy the Silence. I will put a link to that in the description below. You will notice it's really just like a harmonium sound, just with chords. Words like violence break the silence. And the way Martin sings it, it's got a real sort of country and western kind of sound. Dave Vaughn has said on interviews that Martin has a very soft spot for country music. The monstrous success of Enjoy the Silence is largely down to the decision made by Alan Wilder and Flood to turn this ballad which Martin had written and turn it into a up-tempo dance track with a disco beat. If you listen to the stems, the individual parts, by the way, if you join my Patreon community, we are going to do a night where we sit in and listen to the individual stems. So that coming soon. But when you strip the parts back on Enjoy the Silence, you will notice it has a disco beat. Now, I believe that was sampled from a disco record. That's hearsay, I'm not sure. But also the snare that was put in this, it's typical of that sort of what I call that sort of offbeat break snare that I used to call it, from that sort of period. If you think of songs like, excuse the crude comparison here, Come On Vogue, Let Your Body Move to the Music by Madonna. It's got that 808 snare. Now that was a very sort of modern rhythmic approach back at that time. And indeed, that is one of the reasons why Enjoy the Silence is actually the song. When you listen to Violator, Violator is very timeless. It's very what we would call flawless and a sonic masterpiece if we want to get all fanboy about it. But in my opinion, Enjoy the Silence is the one track on the Violator record that kind of gives its age away, and that's down to that typical sort of 90s snare on the offbeat approach, which we'll speak about later in the Enjoy the Silence series. Having said that, fashions always come around. Violator is nevertheless a timeless album, but we don't want to get off topic here. The B-side from Enjoy the Silence was Memphisto, probably one of the least favorite of the B-sides of the Violator series, but nevertheless a great track. Policy of Truth was the third single which was released to promote the Violator album, and that was released on the 7th of May 1990. The B-side to Policy of Truth being Kaleid. Once again, one of the sort of least popular in the B-sides. Although it's one of the least popular ones, there are no bad B-sides in this collection. If we go back to the previous album, I know Pleasure, Little Treasure. I know for a fact Alan Wilder hated that song. And there are a lot of Depeche Mode fans who don't like that song, but there are a lot of Depeche Mode fans who think Pleasure, Little Treasure is a great song and could have made it onto the album. Opinions are divided, but Kaleid, as we call it, another great B-side, not one of the strongest, but certainly not a bad one. We then come down to the fourth release, which was the fourth single to promote the Violator album, which was World in My Eyes, and that was released on the 17th of September, 1990. And this too had two of the favorite B-sides. This had two B-sides on it, Happiest Girl and Sea of Sin. I think the favorite B-sides in the Violator series, according to most Depeche Mode fans, would be Happiest Girl, Sea of Sin, and Dangerous. Sea of Sin, Happiest Girl, not as strong as Dangerous, in my opinion, but good songs. Very often when you hear a B-side, you kind of go, whether it be Depeche Mode or not, you might go, yeah, it's a B-side. But these B-sides, you'd listen to them and go, wow, these are very, very good. These are as good as album tracks. The problem is when you're talking about an album like Violator, where there are no fillers and everything is so strong, it's hard to kind of think of being able to shoehorn one of these songs into Violator. You must remember, though, that I think, I don't know what the intention with Violator it was, but I do think that songs like Blue Dress was probably meant to be a filler track. But I think, as most diehard fans will agree, there are no fillers in Violator. Happiest Girl, to me, out of the B-sides, is probably the song that kind of gives its age away a little bit. And that is, once again, more due to the sort of rhythmic elements and some of the production within that. But that's not in a bad way. It's just that a lot of the songs in the Violator period, they're so sort of timeless. But I will talk about that more when we get down to the production. Now, I've always loved this lyric from the song Happiest Girl. Wanted to feel the joy pass between our eyes. Wanted to feel the joy pass between our thighs. Martin, you kinky bastard. To me, the highlight of the song Happiest Girl is that sort of middle eighth, that break. But it's so short. I wish they had done it. I think it's only 2 bars. I wish they had repeated it for another 2 bars and then repeated it again in the song at some point. But then again, it's probably because that would be too predictable. That's probably why they didn't do it. But yeah, I do like Happiest Girl. On to Sea of Sin. Sea of Sin. Dun, dun. Yeah, it's good. They are not as strong as Dangerous, in my opinion. Now, coming on to Dangerous, I really feel that Dangerous, as I said earlier on in this video, it could have well been a album track on Violator. Now, remember, Violator had 9 tracks, and we hold Violator up as like sonic perfection and all these things. And it's quite interesting because I think if you spoke to Flood and Alan Wilder, who was sort of instrumental in the production of this, they would probably point out quite a few flaws to it. But, to you and me, the consumer, the fan, this is kind of like up there. So I did say if I was to choose one of the B-sides to go onto the Violator album, I really feel that Dangerous is strong enough. I really believe it is up there with the strength of the songs on Violator. And indeed, at the end, I'm going to ask you what your opinions are. And indeed, the challenge would be, this is a very good challenge, is if I think that Dangerous is strong enough to go onto the Violator album, the next challenge I would have is whereabout would you put it within the track listing? Because remember, I've always hailed Violator to have, the track listing is it's so well thought out. I think track listing is something that is very, very, it's something the band really, really think about when they release an album. It really goes back to the days when you'd listen to a record in its entirety, and that was all considered. This is the beginning, this is the middle, this is the this is the down, this is the up, this is the end, whatever. So listening to a record, there is a flow, and it is storytelling, and that is why I'm always very against the the modern way of consuming music, which is on the fly. Oh, that artist, playlists and randomness. Anyway, another story. The point I'm trying to make is if Dangerous made it onto Violator, and indeed, as far as I'm concerned, it is a strong enough song, whereabout would it sit within the track listing? Now, there's a question for you. Now, I just want to quickly point something out to you from Dangerous. Dangerous being my favorite B-side from the Violator period. Watch this. Sound familiar? Listen again. Right, now watch this. Very similar to the melody from Stripped. Okay, it's played in a different key. Stripped is played in this key over here. So just watch where my hands are. I'm going to play Stripped in root form. See, the melody is very simple. It's very Gore. It's very Martin Gore. So it's a similar kind of melody. It has Martin Gore's imprint all over it, although it is played in a different key. Stripped is here. The chords or the bass line does move in a very sort of groovy, funky way, which is typical of Alan Wilder. But just demonstrating that on the piano, it's something like this. Obviously, the bass line's got a lot more boom, 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 boom. But I'm just trying to, on the piano, illustrate the kind of like the inflections on the bass. So it's boom, 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 boom. Very, very funky, very, very groovy. Alan Wilder's bass lines. I mean, one of the best examples I can think off the top of my head was if you watch the devotional DVD, the release, just listen to the Fly on the Windscreen. It's just so like, oh. So, I'll repeat myself. In my opinion, the Violator period spawned some of the best outstanding B-sides, very, very strong B-sides. My personal favorite being Dangerous. In fact, I think it is so strong, it could have made it onto the actual Violator record itself. What do you think? Do you agree or do you disagree? If you had to choose one of the B-sides from the Violator series that would make it onto the actual Violator record to bring it up to 10 songs, which B-side would you choose? And let me know the reason why. That's difficult. Once you've chosen that, whereabout in the track listing would you put it? Would you put it between Waiting for the Night and Enjoy the Silence? Would you put it between, would it be the third track on the album? Where would you put this within the album? That'll be a fascinating discussion. My friends, thank you so much for your support. As always, hit that subscribe button. Remember, you can see in-depth and more detailed versions of this on my Patreon channel if you choose to join. And if you choose not to, understand that I'm grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for your support, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode, which is part 5 of the Violator album review series. Adios.